Hi, my name is Laura Shape, and I'm here with Helen Fraser, and we're going to talk about her art, and I'm really excited. So, welcome, Helen. Thanks so much for
Thank
meeting
you.
me.
Thanks so
Well,
much, Laura.
yeah, you're
Really
welcome.
excited as well.
The I wanted to start by congratulating you because I saw your post about your painting Under One Sky being selected to become a public artwork. Holy
Yes, thank
cow!
you. I know.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, it's really
wow.
exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do
Yes.
you feel about that? And is that something that you'd like to do more of?
Yeah, I mean, a part of what has come out of doing the Vision Quest for me, Laura, is that I'm really passionate about developing my interest in public art further. So it was quite amazing. I was quite in awe, really. I got invited to put in an application because I've had a long-standing connection with the local council,
Hmm.
and my current show is showing with them in a public gallery. So I suppose that I'm really clarifying that I want to do more public art. So to have my painting then put onto um, a public building in the local area is just, yeah, it's sort of awe-inspiring to be at that point. So
Already.
yeah,
I mean,
I'm
you made
really
the decision
grateful.
and bam. I think the universe
Yeah,
heard you.
yeah. Well, it's that sense of having the intention and getting clear, having the clarity of what I want. I'm sure that does make a difference energetically, but also just with what I might say yes to
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
true. That's true, what you're
Yeah,
listening for. That makes sense.
yeah.
Congratulations, that's
Well,
so
thank
exciting.
you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah, I'm
and
stoked.
yeah, for sure. And as a public artist, are you considering becoming a muralist, or would you rather work in a smaller scale, like in this case, and have them, enlarge it on a photograph? Or what do you think your plans
Yeah.
are?
I think my plans are more to do the intricate smaller works and then have them transformed into something bigger. So I
Yeah.
seem to have naturally fallen into a pattern where I love doing really detailed works on paper, textiles, or yes, paintings. The paintings don't tend to be as intricate. They tend to be more bold and colourful. So I think I'm more interested in either having them transformed in some way through becoming high resolution photographs that get used, or having a team that I employ to do mural work. I'm also a psychologist, so I've got a busy private practice, so I probably don't have the time to do murals necessarily
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But I've been advised that maybe working with a team, I could help other artists get more work, but also have my concept put out there more regularly. So yes, murals are one idea that I've definitely had, as well as projections using light.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. You've
so
had some
that
other work projected, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, really, really grateful. That was quite a surprise. What happened is I was in a quilt project, and my quilt block, which was about the history of Australian slavery, ended up being part of the Canberra Enlighten Festival. So it was projected onto the old Parliament House, which is a really significant historical building that actually has quite a lot of pain associated with it when it comes to the descendants of Australian slavery and our First Nations and Torres Strait Island people. So that was just mind blowing to have that happen out of the blue. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. And I'm just like, if you did not know it, yeah, of course, I saw the picture of it, and it was stunning. And if you did not know that was going to happen, and you ran across it, I just can't even imagine how
Yeah, it was
stressful that would feel.
incredible.
Like, wait, what?
Opening Instagram in the morning and going, "What the?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
a
What a
really
rush.
amazing moment as an artist. That was really
Yeah.
significant, actually. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that.
I'll
That's so
bet.
good.
It's like being
Yeah,
a rock star and being like, wait, what? I didn't realize. So I want to actually talk to you. You said about being a psychologist. When did you realize you wanted to make art? And how do you feel your work as a psychologist affects your work as an artist, and vice versa?
yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Sarah. As well, I've always had a creative bent. As a child, I remember my father was a builder, and he used to create his own plans using graphite pencils, and they had this really flat tip. And I remember just being in awe, sitting next to him, going, "Wow, he's creating a picture out of nothing." I was just a small girl, so I remember that was. I'm so proud of him. I want to be like him. There was
Oh,
that
cool.
sense of wonderment about his process.
Uh-huh.
And then my parents separated when I was 8, and we ended up going to live. My mum took us to live in an ironbark forest, which is northeast of Bendigo, which is in the centre of the state that I live in Victoria, Australia. And it's quite a remote area. And what I used to do, I was quite lonely, I think, at the time, and missing my original home and my grandparents and dad. And I remember walking along the gullies. The whole lot of, I think it was 12 really deep gullies that are from the gold rush times.
Hmm.
And I used to walk and wander along those and imagine that there were families and communities. And obviously, it was a way of keeping myself sort of feeling emotionally together and okay and held. but it was a time of real imagination. It was like my imagination was able to go wild, and I could see things in the gullies and I could create pictures in my mind. So although I wasn't using it artistically, I think that I always go back to the gully, and it
Huh.
often comes out in my artwork. So from there, it wasn't until probably my early 20s when I actually worked at a woolen mill, and I was the customer service person. This is in my early 20s. And I created this competition called the world's largest knitting competition.
Wow.
And I invited this famous designer called Kay Fassett, who lives in the UK. He's an American guy,
Uh-huh.
but he lived in the UK, I think still does. I actually wrote to him and asked, it was in the time of letters, and I wrote to him and asked him whether he would like to come out to Australia and judge this competition. And it just happened to be that he'd also been invited by someone else at the time. So he said yes.
Wow.
So that was this sort of amazing, I was only my, sort of, I think I was 24. So it was this sense of sort of creating something. But what happened is that he's just the most prolific creator. And he uses, at the time he was using, you know, UK yarn that's the most beautiful, rich colourway. It's just, exquisite. And what he did is he gave me some free tickets to go to his knitting workshop. And at the time, I was really stumbling with how to do coloured knitting. But the process of seeing the wool on this, it was a stone floor in this place called Montsalvat, which is this old artist colony. So sitting around this great hall with these amazing stone floors with these piles of yarn blew my mind. And I just thought, I want to be like him. I just want to be an artist. I just want to do, it wasn't necessarily with yarn.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I tend to draw textiles. I don't necessarily knit these days as much, but that was the moment when I thought, I want to be an artist. And I don't know how, but I want to be in some way like him and have that. It was the feeling of seeing the colour and the texture on the stone.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. That was the turning point.
Wow.
And then I went from there to, I mean, I dabbled in drawing and painting classes, but then went and at the time I was living in Darwin, and I moved back down to Melbourne to be with my partner Steve. And then I did 4 years of tonal realist painting with a teacher called Barbara McCallum in Ringwood in Melbourne. So I studied quite intensely with her and then went to art school. So I felt like I wanted to do something a bit more contemporary rather than that traditional style of painting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that was my mid-30s. And then it wasn't until actually that I had a significant car accident when I was 41. So that's now 12 years ago. And I had a mild brain trauma. So it was something that I could completely heal from. Thankfully.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank goodness.
Yeah. But I
That's
used art, mainly textile sculpture at the time, to heal my brain.
Huh.
So I used to sit and do the stitching and work with colour and felts and things and it really helped my recovery. And then through that process, I made a commitment to myself a year after that accident. I thought, no, I really want to take my art seriously. So I'd done art, through my 20s, 30s, but this was a time when I made the real commitment. So then I had my first solo show in 2013, so it's 10 years.
Wow.
So I would say I've committed to being a more professional artist 10 years ago.
Wow.
That's sort of been my trajectory, I suppose.
Seems to be working out for you. That's really great. I mean, didn't see this question coming because I didn't know your background, but I'm super fascinated with the healing your brain, with art. Like, what was it doing? Like, is it just the intricacy and having to connect the movement?
Yeah. Well, I suppose with a mild brain trauma, it's really hard to make the links in your brain, in your mind with your thinking. So it's quite scary initially. So it's like the neural pathways in your brain have been injured through bruising, really. So for me, it was like I think it was like almost rebuilding those neural pathways so that they could make links. So over time, because I had to think about what was going where, it was like my imagination was able to help the pathways rebuild. That's how it felt. I don't know whether that's actually I'm sure if I talk to a neuropsychologist, they might have a much more technical way of looking at it. But yeah, it really gave me a lot of faith in, just the enjoyment of the creative process, but also the healing power of it in so many different ways. So, and I've realised I forgot to answer your question about the psychology. So you're asking about, how they sort of interact. And I guess, I think having thousands and thousands of hours of sitting with people and hearing their stories and, them honouring me with their pain and having faith in me to hold that space, I think that somehow I've been told that my artwork holds healing properties. Now, and I often create symbols that tend to lead to healing and growth for me, but also people who buy my work, collect my work, often they're healers or they're looking for healing. So there's something that I think has happened in me and how I use my art to support my psychology practice, keep me as sane as possible and, enjoying my life and feeling joyful feeling relaxed.
Mhm.
That's really important to me. So I use it as like a complement to the other work. I've never not wanted to be a psychologist. I use them together um, as a complement. I think they sort of feed each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously you must be dealing with a lot of heavy topics with other people, and what I've noticed in your art is there seems to be a lot of optimism. I mean, even in
Mm,
when you're talking about Australia's background and the terrible things it's done to people, like the art that you create from it is always looks optimistic. Like it's not a dirge, right? Like I never, when I look at your art and I feel like,
mm,
oh, this is that heavy thing about this heavy topic. It's more of a, I'm
mm.
taking this
Yeah.
heavy topic and I'm looking forward to how we can make it better in the future. And I think that's amazing.
Oh, well, thanks, Laura. Well, that's really interesting feedback because when I was creating my last body of work, which I've now got on exhibition, the Under
Hmm.
One Sky
Hmm.
series,
Hmm.
I did that as like I started to do acrylic paintings during COVID because I was working, up to 9 hours a day online with clients, and I was really tired and exhausted. But I was also getting really filled up with a lot of emotion I was catching, and my own emotion, fear, you know, even terror, sad, a lot of grief, and deep sort of anxiety in my body. So I've turned to acrylic painting to get the emotion out in
Hmm.
between clients. So I'd go and you can wash your brushes really quickly with acrylic.
Hmm.
So I could wash up really in between clients. It wasn't so arduous as like oil painting. Excuse me. So I found that, yeah, I was getting those paintings out quite quickly. I didn't completely finish them. I didn't varnish them until, I was getting ready for exhibition. I was just getting the emotion out. And
Huh.
I thought at the time that paintings would be filled with angst. But then when I've showed them to people, people are like, oh, these are actually quite buoyant and fun. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not how I felt when I was making them. So I
Huh.
think maybe that's part of the transformation, this idea that the works, by getting it out, it's like a type of processing and healing me. So therefore, somehow that comes out as optimism. I
Which
don't
is
fully understand it, but
It's quite an amazing alchemy, right?
mm,
And I agree that actually the Under One Sky is part of what I was looking at when I formed that opinion of work. And just like, the sky alone is sky blue is the world's most optimistic color. Like that's, been
yeah,
studied globally,
yes,
and everyone just loves that color. It makes people smile.
yeah,
So, but I agree with the commenter that, those paintings are all beautiful and buoyant and they look joyful. And so however you processed it into paint, it really, it's a
oh, thank
really
you,
wonderful alchemy.
thank you.
And along those lines, so you created an interactive installation of a full-sized open coffin called Grief Transforms Us. And even that like is sky blue and like optimistic as far as go. It's a pretty joyful one. I wanted to ask you what gave you the idea for it and for making it interactive.
Well, I remember during the pandemic, a family member of mine, actually my mother's partner, was dying at the
Hmm.
time, and I remember around that time I had this image of a coffin without a lid that had moths flying out of it.
Hmm.
I don't know what the symbol is particularly there, but I could see it in my imagination. And I think there was something very sort of calming about there not being a lid, like a
Hmm.
sense of almost like going into the coffin and then something coming out of it.
Hmm.
So, I was there to support her when she died. She died over a period of a week. And I was lucky enough to be able to go to the aged care facility and be with her and support her while she was in that sort of acute pain stage of the
Hmm.
dying process. And I'd never done that before. And it was in between lockdowns, so I could actually go to an aged care facility. And, staff were really stressed. And, it was just
Uh,
sort of this bizarre timing um, of how things worked that I could actually be there. So I think the coffin, initially it started on its side. And then when my friend Mark, who I paid to make the coffin, he's a builder, he's the husband of a very close artist friend of mine, and he did such a beautiful job. And I wanted it in two pieces so I could carry it in my car. And I remember when I first saw it, it was on its like base, and
uh-huh.
it just looked so powerful on
Standing.
its
Uh-huh.
standing. And it was almost like we wanted to go in and out of it. We were making jokes about it at the time. But I remember when I put it into my car and I drove off, I felt so sad.
Oh.
It was like almost like the coffin being in my car represented all the pain of the pandemic
Wow.
and the losses that I'd experienced personally within the family. And it wasn't until I really started to paint it that the sadness actually moved.
Hmm.
So I had probably about 3 weeks where I felt acutely sad with it in my presence.
Hmm.
But I suppose it is a symbol of such great pain in our society, isn't it? Often.
Sure.
But it's almost like the making of it also allowed me to transform my pain.
Mhm.
So by the end of it, it took, probably 6 weeks to create. And then the lining was quite arduous to work out how to do it and fit it so it looked precise. But there was something in the making process that was quite profound for me. And I think almost like something was dying off in me and being reborn.
So it
That's
was
pretty
like a
profound.
catharsis.
It was really cathartic.
Huh.
And I'm sure that was symbolic of the end of the pandemic, the end of my body of work.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the last works that I created. So, yeah, even talking about it, I feel a bit of emotion within me because
Okay.
of what it represents. Yeah, so, but again, it's quite a joyful piece in the way that
Yeah.
it's been installed, and the sense of in the exhibition space, I'm thinking and inviting people to throw their pain from the pandemic into the coffin,
Mhm.
walk around the coffin or sculpture, whatever you want to call it, and then think about how they've grown as a result of the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
and then walk out of that black walled space thinking about how they're different now. So again, this sense of transformation. So I suppose I have this naturally optimistic belief that if we put the work in, we can transform. And I believe that with my clients. I've seen it so many thousands of times. People, when they go in and they really look at the truth in themselves, they are different
Mhm.
over time. So
Mhm.
I just believe that we can be different even if we are scared that we can't be. I think it's just an ultimate sort of value or belief in me that you can change.
That's awesome. I agree with you. And, what kind of response would you say it's getting? Do you think people are understanding your vision on that? Or are you getting the response you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, when I had the opening night, I asked people the question, how many of you still feel like you're carrying pain from the pandemic? And a few hands went up.
Yeah.
But when I asked the question, do you feel you've changed from the start of the pandemic? Almost every hand went up.
Wow.
And I found that really fascinating. I didn't quite expect that response.
Uh-huh.
And then I have had people talk about how the work, particularly in that room, has allowed them to reflect on the pain in a deeper way.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. It's hard with the public gallery because I don't have as much interaction with people who are in the space, but I have had messages from people saying thanking me for being so vulnerable and allowing them to have that memory of what the pain was like, because some people have said that I've got an artwork in the show called The Ring of Steel, and in Melbourne the government put in a lockdown with a ring of steel. That's what they called it, which
Uh-huh.
was you couldn't go if you didn't live in the ring of steel. You couldn't go in the ring of steel without a permit,
Gotcha.
and you couldn't leave it
Uh-huh.
without a almost $5,000 fine. It was this bizarre set of rules.
Wow.
And then people had forgotten. People that were living in Melbourne, when they saw that artwork called The Ring of Steel, they were, oh, how absurd was that? We went through that. They had actually forgotten or been in denial about it, pushed it
Yeah.
away, repressed it. Yeah,
Wow.
so I found that quite amazing that the artwork was able to bring it back and help them to think about it in a new way,
Yeah.
and how much they'd suffered but were now repressing.
Wow. So there's the
Yeah,
overlap with your psychology as well. Like you're even helping to heal people that way. Like that
yeah.
that's a
I think
real
that's really
gift.
important to me.
Yeah,
Mm,
clearly. That's a real gift.
yeah.
Good for you. I mean, that's so kind of you to do to for your audience. That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Um, I wanted to talk about your tassel illustrations because I find them really charming. What is the story behind them?
Well, I remember being gifted a tassel, which is cream coloured tassel about this big,
Mhm.
and I had it in my studio one day, and I'd been doing a lot of hours of ink drawing with Copic markers for an exhibition that I had in 2016 in Melbourne. It was called Mountain is Myself, and it was meditative line drawings over a period of 2 years that ended up looking like mountainscapes. And because I've been doing this hours, I swear it was hours and hundreds of hours of it, I started to use the line work to draw this particular tassel. I just got drawn towards it. And when I drew it, it looked really quirky. And it looked almost organic, like the bit at the top
Uh-huh.
looked a bit like a leaf or something. And I thought, that's actually really sort of interesting. And it just
Uh-huh.
came out of me fully formed. And
Huh.
that's sort of strange. I thought, oh, maybe it's a one off.
Uh-huh.
So then I think I found some photos on the net of tassels, and I did the same thing again.
Huh.
And I just kept creating these drawings of tassels. So they would start with graphite, quite detailed observational drawing, and then they would end up having patterns and then this line work that looked organic. So almost like a combination of I don't know, like certainly the pattern work was different to the actual tassel,
Hmm.
but a lot of combination of light and dark, and then this organic element to them, and having almost like they were dancing or having some sort of personality. So I think I tend to work in a series format. So I like to have one thing starting the series and then slightly shifting it, and then end up having a collection that works as a whole. So I tend to work in that way. So I like to have fragments that end up going into a bigger something. So I
Huh.
think again that's that transformative focus of small bits, maybe representing bits of me that are broken that I want to have healed or made into a whole. So yeah, the tassels I feel like they were like my true artist self coming out.
Huh. Are
Yeah, it
they
was like finding my voice as an artist. I feel like they really represent that because they're quirky and sort of they've all got unique personalities, which I suppose are parts of me or parts of all of us. They showed me that I could use line in a way that it was almost like something else was creating them. So it was that profound sense of an artist of this is bigger than me. I'm like the conduit.
wow?
That was a starting point of really feeling that. So
Uh-huh.
I'm really grateful to that series because they gave me a lot of confidence as an artist. And they've been well received as well, which is wonderful. But for me, they were like a turning point. Mm.
Wow, that's neat. They are super quirky, but as I look at them, they have very clear personalities, and some of them are couples, and some of them are
Yeah.
dancing. It's just like they're just joyful, and I just love this sort of what is it the is it the what is the word when you ascribe human qualities to something
Yes.
anthropomorphizing?
Yes,
I love that
exactly.
you've done that. I think they're really fun.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um, one more question I have is who? Well, actually, I have two. Who do you feel your art is for? Are you trying to speak to anyone in particular, or is it just
Mm.
you speaking?
No, I think now it used to be for me,
Hmm.
but now, especially with this clarification that I really want to work in the public realm and
Hmm.
create artworks that are for community.
Hmm.
So I think it's for the world. I know that sounds like a big thing, but it feels like it's for society, for community, and to support people to grow in some
Oh,
way. Like, and it's not coming. I don't sit down and think this is for the community.
sure.
I do it. I do it with myself in mind as I'm doing it, but then I know that it's going to be out somewhere else. So it gets, it's for others now in a way that it never felt before.
Like a
Yeah,
gift. That's
yeah, I
wonderful.
guess it is. Yeah, it really, it's a deep motivation for me now.
I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah.
And then,
Thanks, Laura.
what would make you feel most accomplished as an artist? I mean, besides now just having your painting printed on the side of a building, like now you're going to step
Yeah,
it up. So, what would be the next one?
I think for me to be able to show my work in a regional gallery in Australia
Hmm.
would be a really huge step for me. I'd be so honoured to be able to work with that sort of organisation and curators in that sort of realm. Yeah, that's probably my next real big step.
That'll
Yeah,
probably be like next month. I can't wait to
I
see.
don't think so. Don't think
Uh,
so.
we'll see. I think this show is a big
Thanks, Laura.
success, and I think that I think you're going places for sure.
Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you. You and I were we just met in a group coordinated and organized and led by Krista Cloutier called The Working Artist, and this we were in a I think 3 month long. Um, I'm not quite sure what to call it.
Yeah.
Group project, the six of us, called the Vision Quest, Working Artist Vision Quest. So I just wanted to ask you, when you first joined it, what did you expect, and then what has the experience been?
Well, initially, I had a pretty open mind. I was just really drawn to the idea of, I love having a vision and seeing it realised,
Hmm.
and that's part of what I love as an artist. But I also had this deep sort of yearning and longing for getting clarity with what I really want from the heart.
Hmm.
And it was just the timing of it just felt really right when Krista put the call out. So I think my expectation was to go on a process and not know what I really want, and then find it as I went. So and to meet other artists and have the experience of being able to support them and be supported by them, and so it was very much an open sort of open-hearted sense of um, just wondering and just being open to the process. And I suppose as I've gone through it, I mean, I found it at times, just incredibly enlightening as to
Oh
like
no, sorry. I think we might have the recording might stop. Sorry, go ahead. Keep talking. I'm
oh, that's
sorry.
all right. Yeah, no worries. I think it's been just incredibly confirming and getting clearer on my vision. And it's been hard to work out what the vision was. But then as we've gone along, like at times, yeah, I've been really challenged to see that there are parts of me that I didn't expect, such as public speaking, for example. Is something that I find quite hard and challenging, but it's part of the vision. It's like, oh, part of me is like, oh, I didn't want that to be part of the vision, but it is part of the vision. So some parts have been unexpected, but overall, it's just been this incredible sense of, getting relaxed about the vision and a sense of if my intention's there, then I can attract it. So it's just this beautiful sense of like
That's
peace.
awesome.
Yeah, and just to be able to have feedback from all of you as a group. Like I could never have seen aspects to my own work, like you said once, Laura, that my work often goes from small to quite large, like on the projection onto the building. And I hadn't actually seen that, and that's been massively helpful to set as part of where I want to go, to see that I've already done some of that. So yeah, to see I'm already on the path to where I want to go.
Yeah, you just had to be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think having the group is just amazingly fruitful because it speeds things up in regards to our own knowledge of ourselves. So I think I'll be forever grateful for the Vision Quest because, yeah, I just feel, yeah, quite relaxed about what is possible and still not knowing how it's going to perform, but yeah, sort of getting awe of the process of attraction, I suppose. Once you get clear on what you want.
I agree. I have to comment on you in particular. Like I often, after our meetings, I'll often email Krista, full disclosure, and say, did you see how radiant Helen is today? Like I've been watching you in particular over the course of all this, and every meeting, like you glow more and more. Like it's just the oddest thing. Like you over time, like go back and watch all your videos and see if you see it. Like you've become more and more beautiful. I feel like you're sitting up straighter, like you're glowing and smiling more. Like I don't know if it's these meetings or what, but like there's a visual difference in you since the beginning.
Wow.
And I'm just so fascinated by that. So it's clearly working, or it's not working, that's for sure.
Yes. Well, thank you, Laura.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. Yeah.
What advice would you give to a fellow artist who might want to join a future Vision Quest?
Oh, just if it feels right for you, just jump. Do it. Don't hold back. It could be one of the best things that you've ever done. And I also have been thinking that it could also like speed up the art career trajectory by about 10 years, if not more. I reckon it's speeding things up for all of us, maybe in ways we don't know, of course, but by getting so clear, it just shows, I think it's going to save people time and just opportunities they might not have fitted. I say no to them and yes to the ones that fit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just encourage people to go for it. Absolutely.
All right. I agree. We just have about a minute left. So if someone wants to see your work or find out more about you, where should they go?
Oh, thanks, Laura. So my website is www.helenfraser.net.au and my Instagram is HelenFraser_artist.
And that's Fraser, 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 right?
S-E-R. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in our meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It's been fantastic.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is going to shut down in a sec, so I'm just going to stop it right here, and I'll talk to you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.